Welcome into Palmetto Sports Daily on this Monday. Glad that you're starting the week with us. I'm Teagan here in Myrtle Beach. We've got Caroline there in Greenville, and we've got Julia in Columbia. Now we're starting the show off today with some news that just came out. Jerome Singleton, the commissioner of the South Carolina High School League, will retire after more than 20 years in the job. This comes after his retirement plan was approved unanimously by the league. That's a vote of 16 to nothing. So that plan says that he will retire no later than July 1st of 2027. So what that means in terms of when exactly he steps out of this role, still to be determined. But this comes at a really interesting time, guys, because there is a bill in the state house that looks to dissolve the South Carolina High School League, and that vote is supposed to take place this Thursday. So this could maybe affect the minds of some of the legislators that are going to vote on this. So definitely something to keep an eye on. Just kind of want to get your guys' quick thoughts on this. I know we don't have a ton of information as this comes out right now, but Caroline, just your quick reaction.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's super interesting. I mean, you're talking about a South Carolina high school league that's been around for decades and decades and decades, managing high school sports all across the state. And so I think that there's been a lot of shifts in athletics regardless of what level that's at, right? Of course, we've seen a lot of change in college recently for a whole plethora of different reasons, but just seeing a change come at the high school level is also really interesting. So like you said, Teagan, we don't have a ton of information on it. Also, the timing of it is really interesting, being towards the postseason of playoff high school and girls and boys basketball, I should say. You got baseball coming up here like later towards the end of the spring, and so definitely interesting that it's not something that waited until the summer. I know that there were a lot of legal hearings and stuff that went into that, and the timing of those doesn't really follow the high school sports calendar, I am sure, but definitely something that we'll probably have to keep tabs on and monitor for you guys, and how it ends up impacting our local teams and our local sports and kind of what that looks like for them. So what are your initial thoughts though, Julia? What do you think about all this?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it is very interesting. And I mean, I've covered the high school league for 4 years now, so I've seen a lot of changes over these last 4 years. And of course, they do change, you know, the reclassification and everything like that every couple of years. And they're supposed to do that starting again next year. That all just came down. So you got to wonder like how that would affect all of those things if any big changes were to be made in the next couple of months. Of course, this vote, you know, it doesn't mean that things are going to happen immediately. There's a lot of things that have to go into play here, but it is interesting timing, and I wonder where this is going to go and how it's going to affect the high schools around the state. And you know, I know a lot of people have been clamoring for some change with high school sports, especially as you look around the nation and how other states are handling things. So I'll be really curious to see where this goes and how it affects everyone, because this is all coming down the wire pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, like I said, we'll continue to keep tabs on it for you guys, but we'll shift kind of back towards the college ranks of things, because we have a big-time baseball series that we need to talk about from this weekend. The Palmetto Series went down between Clemson and South Carolina. Just really fun kind of 3 days. I'm sure, Julia, when you were there on Friday, fun wasn't the right word you were going to use because of how rainy it was. There's a little bit of a rain delay. South Carolina ends up winning the first game 7-0, shutting out Clemson, handing them their first loss. Clemson turns around, comes out, wins game 2 4-1, kind of having a different deal with its pitcher shutting down South Carolina. I say pitcher singular because Michael Sharman threw a complete game, went all 9 innings, just an insane outing, and he only threw 78 pitches. So just to kind of double down on how impressive that was. And of those pitches, 67 of them were strikes. So really just what Coach Eric Bakich called an all-time performance from Sharman. That pitching was kind of the same story that rolled over into yesterday's game, where Clemson ends up winning that one 7-2. So the Tigers end up taking this series 2-1. It's the third straight year that they have won the Palmetto Series. And I just want to go back and talk about this pitching for a second for Clemson, because we can get caught up in two of the games having 7 runs for either sides as well. But they kept the Gamecocks to 4 hits in each of the 3 games, which is really interesting. It was Talon Bell, Drew Titsworth, and Danny Nelson who closed it out in that game 3. So just something to be said for that pitching staff and how they performed, especially against a South Carolina offense that had the bats cooking. I know only 4 hits, but they were getting the runs around on Friday night in the first game as well. So great series just to watch from a spectator point of view. A lot of competitiveness. Of course, this rivalry is always really fun and has a tendency to get a little heated on both sides, whether those are the fans or maybe members of the team or coaches or whatnot. So I want to talk about something that head coach Eric Bakich said on Saturday night after Clemson got the win at the neutral site game. He was talking about celebrating and Clemson getting the win, and basically saying that the Tigers didn't need to do celebrating before the game was over on the mound in order to know that they had the win or get to the win. And his comments, Scott, I don't know if that's really what he meant by it. I don't know if it was meant to be a stab. We're not entirely sure, but it certainly was portrayed that way online on social media. It kind of blew up a little bit, and he and South Carolina head coach Paul Manieri were also asked about it yesterday. So we're going to let them kind of give their thoughts, and then we'll share our thoughts on the situation with you guys.
I didn't see Eric's comments. I'm not going to comment on his comments.
I'm totally good with celebrating big wins. Like, this is huge. Like, this series is huge. It's just I think for me the line is when it goes from celebrating for your team to directing your energy to the other team, and so that's probably the only distinction I would make. But I'm totally fine. They kicked our butt up and down the field on Friday. That was a big win. The way Gunther and Valentine pitched, it deserved to be celebrated for sure. And we're certainly going to celebrate this series win, because that's really what we're after. But I'm all for team celebrations, and I don't want that to get conflated with, we don't celebrate, because we do. We celebrate our victories here, especially big ones in a rivalry series.
So after listening to Coach Bakich kind of explain yesterday, I think he was more upset about the celebrating that was maybe going on before the game was over. I was not there on Saturday. Julia, I know that you were. So what did you see? What's Coach referencing when he's talking about the celebrating, and kind of what are your thoughts from both of them talking about this?
The thing is I didn't really observe anything, so I don't know if I wasn't paying close enough attention. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. I mean, of course, on Friday night, South Carolina was very excited to get that win, because that's the first time they'd beaten Clemson even in a game since 2023. So you're going to expect some excitement, especially with the way that game was played and, the night that Gunther had. But on Saturday,
right.
I don't know. And I mean, it just kind of got perpetuated throughout the weekend. This is one of those things that I think became more of an issue outside both programs than it actually did internally. I think it was kind of conflated by the fan bases on both sides, and they decided to create some sort of narrative rather than the teams subscribing to any of those beliefs. So I didn't really see anything out of the normal, and I don't know, I guess maybe I should have been paying closer attention. I was trying to get down to the field to get to the interviews, but it just seemed like normal rivalry celebration. It's not like we were seeing full on like hockey brawls out there, like nobody was fighting, but it seemed normal to me. Teagan, I don't know how much of these games you watched, but it didn't seem that crazy.
Yeah, I mean, my Twitter feed or X feed, I think, looked a little different from you guys. I didn't really get the Clemson, South Carolina fan side. I got mostly Coastal fans complaining about pretty much anything you can complain about with Coastal baseball, whether it was the defense against Texas, whether it was the offense against UTSA, or whether it was the fact that they were missing the 4 pitchers that are all injured right now.
Valid.
So, I think it's definitely a little bit of the fans for South Carolina and Clemson. making this into a bigger situation than it is the coaches, I think, like you're saying, Julia. But just talk a little bit about Coastal baseball. You know, I just threw out some of their issues. They lost against Texas 8-1 this weekend. Texas was number 3. Coastal Carolina at the time was number 9. But if you looked at that top 25 today from D1 baseball, the Chants have dropped to number 16, and that's because of that loss to Texas, plus a 16-10 loss against UTSA, who's now number 25 in that poll. And then the Chants did beat number 25, Ole Miss, 9-2 on the last day of the tournament, which took place in Texas. Ole Miss dropping out of the top 25 because of that as well. Now, the game against the Longhorns, Coastal did not score until the 7th inning in that one. We've seen a little bit of an issue with Coastal trying to spread out their offense, trying to get on the board early, if at all, early in these games. They didn't score until the 7th. That was Trace Mason crossing the plate on an RBI single from Walker Mitchell. Pitching-wise, I mean, Texas had 4 home runs in this one. It was an ugly game to watch for the Chants. UTSA, they were up 13-1 at the top of the 5th inning. The Roadrunners, not Coastal Carolina. Coastal was able to come back a little bit. They only lost 16-10 in that one. But just, again, another really tough game to watch for Coastal Carolina. And then after those two, they beat Ole Miss. But at that point, I think there was just a lot of disappointment or just confusion with what this team is able to do in this moment. Chants are 7-4 overall after the weekend. We're going to take a quick break here on Palmetto Sports Daily. We'll be right back on the other side with more.
Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily. We've reached conference tournament week for women's basketball. Looking ahead to some exciting action all over the country this week. But coming up in Greenville, up in your neck of the woods, Caroline, we've got South Carolina as the number 1 overall seed in the SEC tournament at the end of this week. The Gamecocks will play their first game on Friday in the quarterfinals, and they'll have to wait a couple days to figure out who they will play because they get that double bye. But first, let's recap what they did in their final game of the regular season. They were on the road at number 16 Kentucky. They had to play yet another top 25 team. That just seems like, every single day at this point for the Gamecocks. And it was honestly a pretty gritty game for this team. And Dawn talked about it post-game about how they've had to, just play so many different types of games this season and how they've had to prove themselves in all of those different games. And Sunday was no different. They beat Kentucky 60-56, and the Wildcats kept coming back. Clara Strack had 24 points for Kentucky. She went up against Medina Okot, who had 21 points and 13 rebounds. That is her 20th double-double of the season. She's just an unreal force for South Carolina. So they wrap up the regular season 29-2, 15-1 in the SEC, and of course they get that number 1 overall seed in the SEC tournament, and they really need to win that tournament if they want to lock up one of the top 4 seeds in the NCAA tournament, which is coming up right around the corner. I can't believe it, guys. I mean, how is it March? Where did this year go already? But let's listen to Dawn Staley after the Kentucky win and just how they got it.
We could play a lot of different ways. However, I think this league has allowed us to win a lot of different ways. I mean, you do have to coach them up. You do have to have players that can make plays. And then I think just defensively. I mean, we only scored 60 points, but to only allow someone 56, that's really saying something as well. So, we can win scoring 80 points. We can win scoring 60 points. I think it's just a confidence builder for us just to have some success in our league.
Well, and important to note, they could face Kentucky again. They will play either the Wildcats, Arkansas, or Georgia, depending on who wins in these first 2 rounds. And that, again, will be on Friday at noon. Caroline, what's happening with the Clemson women?
Oh yeah, well we got ACC tournament also coming up this week, so that'll be going on just outside of Atlanta from Thursday to Sunday. The Tigers are going to be playing on Thursday. They've locked up the 9 seed, so they'll play against 8 seed Virginia. They actually lost to Virginia by 10 back when they two faced off in the regular season, but an opportunity to, maybe get a second round win there. They got the first round bye, and then if they do win, they would get a rematch with number 1 Duke the following day. But Clemson did not close out the regular season maybe the way that they wanted to. It was a blowout loss. Really, there's not another way to describe it, against Stanford on Sunday. They lost 85-50. They won the first part of the West Coast trip against Cal on Thursday, and then I think Sean Poppy was just saying, man, those West Coast trips catch up to you. You know, you're fatigued, you're exhausted, and also Mia Moore did not play. She's currently dealing with a lower body injury that she sustained against Syracuse, which was actually before this Duke game where the video that you're watching from is from. So she's got something going on. Coach says they're trying to rest her. They're hoping she's going to be able to go on Thursday, but he said if she does play Thursday, and they win, don't expect her to play Friday. So they're trying to play the long game with her in the event that Clemson makes the NCAA tournament, because they know that they are going to need their star when they get to that point. But the Tigers really hoping they are going to get to that point. Sean Poppy today saying on the ACC tournament preview Zoom that they had earlier this afternoon that he thinks this team is an NCAA tournament team. He's been saying that for weeks. I'll let him explain why and just explain some of the work that this group has put in to really get to this point and be in that conversation.
I think that we've finally put Clemson on the map, that, hey, they're coming and they're here to stay. And I couldn't be more proud of them and what they've helped us establish. I do think that as many one-year kids as we had, this will be a place they always call home, as we've really formed a true family here. And it's been a lot of fun to watch and play a part in for them to, again, they set out goals when they got here in June to get this program to an NCAA tournament team, to be in the tournament. And I do believe they're a tournament team. And, to be here down the stretch, it'd be really nice for them to just, get that one or two more that we may need to get our name called, for them to reach their dreams and goals. There's no doubt that I think that they've put themselves there.
Definitely some resume building opportunities for the Tigers coming up in this ACC tournament. Again, they play Thursday, they'll face Virginia, and that'll be at 11 a.m. Not the only teams in action, though. Teagan, what's going on with Coastal?
Yeah, Coastal Carolina women also have the 9 seed, just like Clemson, and Coastal will get a first-round bye, and then they'll have to play either App State or South Alabama, and that puts the women in a really good place because they beat App State twice this season and they beat South Alabama. That final score was 63-59, so a little bit of a closer game for the Chants in that one, but this team has performed really well kind of to end the season against the teams that they had learned how to play against earlier in the season, if that makes sense. So they've got a little bit of advantage there with them. Now, if Coastal wins, they'll then play Texas State, and Coastal beat them 85-53 earlier this season. It was one of the Chants' biggest wins of the year. Also, Coastal Carolina has the Sun Belt Conference Freshman of the Year. That's Kinsey Grimes. That announcement was made earlier today. So she has just been an absolute weapon for the Chants this year. Every game that I've seen her play in, she is just out there giving it everything she has. Of course, Coastal Chaos is their mantra, as head coach Kevin Pedersen has said before. Now, the ladies left today to head to Pensacola for the Sun Belt tournament. I was going to try to catch up with them before they left, but they hopped on that plane before I could. So Coastal Carolina, again, they'll play on Wednesday. That'll be either App State or South Alabama. We've got some more basketball to talk about here on the show today, so we'll be right back with that. Welcome back into Palmetto Sports Daily. We just wrapped up talking about some women's basketball, so we're switching up to men's hoops now. Coastal Carolina with the 3 seed in the Sun Belt tournament, heading to Pensacola, Florida for this one, but they will not play until March 8th. So Coastal with a little bit of a break, but it leaves a lot of unknowns for, of course, who they're going to play. The possibilities include ULM, ODU, Georgia Southern, Ark State, and South Alabama. Now, 2 of these teams, Ark State and South Alabama, Coastal has lost to once. They've only played once. Georgia Southern, Coastal beat them once, lost once. Both of those were in overtime. ODU, 1 win, 1 loss. ULM, beat them, just played once. So, a lot of question marks for Coastal in this one, but with Coastal having the 3 seed, they've got March Madness pretty much within sight. They're towards the end of that bracket, and if they can get it done, then they're heading to that March Madness. If Coastal beats whoever they play on the 8th, they'll play Marshall. That's Team Coastal beat 79-75 on February 21st. Now, there is the possibility on the other side of the bracket, Coastal could end up playing Troy in the championship. Coastal has not played them this year yet. So that's just a little bit of a glance at what's possible for Coastal. Caroline, how about Clemson?
Yeah, well, not quite tournament time for Clemson men's basketball yet. Got 2 more regular season games left on the schedule, starting with number 17 North Carolina tomorrow night. That game will be at the Dean Dome in Chapel Hill, so going to be a tough one, but should be a fun one. Our reporter Ella Grogan will be there on the scene, so that'll be exciting. They got a big-time upset over number 24 Louisville on Saturday, snapping that 4-game skid. Brad Brownell challenged his team to finish strong, and that is kind of what they are trying to do right now. So 2 more. They're going to try to get another win, add to their resume with that game on Tuesday. That'll be at 7 p.m. We will be looking forward to it, but we are also going to take a quick break right now. We will be right back after this. Welcome back into Palmetto Sports Daily. Really quick before we go, a couple of really cool softball things that happened over the weekend. Clemson head softball coach John Rittman picked up his 1,000th career win as a head coach, only one of 11 active Division I coaches that have reached that mark. He also hit his 250 mark at Clemson, so he's the second active winningest head coach, that sounds right, behind Brad Brownell at Clemson, so that's really exciting. And Julia, also some cool things for the Gamecocks happening this weekend.
Yes, big bats here in Columbia on Sunday. South Carolina scores 33 runs against Queens across 2 games on Sunday afternoon, including 25 in Game 1. Very impressive, and they have to open up SEC play against Texas on Friday. That's going to do it for us here on Palmetto Sports Daily. We'll see you tomorrow.